And we are live! A couple minutes late because I totally forgot to set up everything on my end StreamYard wise. But anyway, that's all good. And it's in the past now. These things are in the past. We have to move on. How apropos. I am Adam. This is Highly Articulated. We're going to have fun today because my co-host is a repeat offender. He was just on a couple weeks ago. We're actually going to update on a topic that we talked about last week, and I'm curious. I will say this. He reached out to me and said, "Can I be on and can I choose the topic?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely. That saves me a whole bunch of work. I don't have to find a host. I don't have to think about a topic. I'll just work with what you've got." Auston, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I finally have a job now. That's good.
That's great. That's great news, of course.
I can feed my addiction.
You absolutely can. I would suggest that that's probably a necessity for the addiction that we have.
Absolutely.
Because it is not cheap. And we'll probably touch on that a little bit going forward. But first and foremost, should we update the viewers on the ghost?
Absolutely.
Now, you were on a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And at that time you had backed for one ghost, correct?
Yeah, one. It was only ever going to be one.
just to clarify the details, you had backed for one. You had said you weren't 100% certain whether or not you were going to actually sort of keep the back. Did you back the ghost or not?
Before I give the definitive answer.
Oh, come on. You're going to make them wait for it?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one point I mentioned in the stream when I was last on was if I want the whole crew. Right, I didn't like the fact the crew were stretch goals. So, like, if you even don't get one crew member, that's a bummer.
Yes.
On the final day, surely enough, all the stretch goals were matched. So, like, it had my requirements. All the crew members were there.
Hasbro did everything they could to get you back the ghost.
I still backed out, and a number of reasons. The number one reason was obviously the cost. Like, it's just as a Canadian specifically, it's so expensive. I hear about Hasbro premium members in the States having free shipping, which I can totally understand. At that point, yeah, I get it. Shipping to Canada was 100 American.
It was?
It was 100 American, $99.99. So with that, and
I didn't know that.
On top of that, we still get taxed.
Mm-hmm.
Event conversion. I can't remember the exact cost, but I think it was around $900 all in.
Yeah, I mean, 500 plus the 100 shipping plus taxes. I could probably do the math, but I'll just ballpark it.
It was like 880 or something like that. I just rounded to 900, and at that point, to me, that's like aftermarket pricing for a lot of HasLabs.
Mm-hmm.
So right out the gate, paying that up front is a turnoff.
Yeah,
again,
I mean, it'd be $900. Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, I just said, I just got a job, meaning I didn't have income, or at least not good income, but
Not
Duck.
legal income? Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
I was selling toys, as everyone knows. So I had some money
Right,
coming in.
right. On a street
But
corner?
yeah, yes, the Facebook Marketplace street corner.
Yeah.
I sold to
Look,
some
it's not
locals.
far off sometimes.
So obviously the cost was a big deal. Of course, it's the old issue of what everyone has. Where am I going to put it? And
Yeah.
I had a spot in mind where I was going to put it, but then I got like dimensions of it, and I went, oh, that actually might be too big for where I want to put it.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And because I was going to put it right beside, I have two Detolfs, and on the top of one is the Razor Crest. I was going to have the Ghost on top of the other one, and
Yep.
it might have just fit if my Detolf wasn't up against the wall.
Yeah.
Right? If it could
Yeah,
cover the
exactly.
full area, it would fit. But so that was a big thing. But at the end of the day, it was so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I grew up loving the Ghost. Like the Ghost is fairly
Yeah.
recent. If it was the Millennium Falcon, that would have been tough. I don't know. Maybe I would have found a
Mm-hmm.
way to do it. But at the end, I can live without it. I'm not kicking myself for not backing. I might kick myself once it's starts showing up, and I
Mm-hmm.
might go, "Oh, I wish I had that." But at the same time, I didn't back the HasLab for the Razor Crest, and I still managed to get it. So,
and I was gonna say you may still have the opportunity. It may be a little bit more expensive.
yeah,
It might not. I mean, you never know. I mean,
yeah.
things change. People's economic circumstances change. There might be, the roles may reverse once that thing ships. Somebody may be out of work when you're gainfully employed,
Yeah.
and you might be able to help them by taking it off their hands. Devoid of Logic said, I backed the Ghost. Before it arrives, I'll need to have a priest visit my home. Kevin McCarthy said, that was my issue. Way too large. I have the Lego UCS Millennium Falcon, which for anybody that doesn't know is like the giant Millennium Falcon. At the time that I purchased it, we were living in our old house, so I didn't know where I was going to put it because we were building the house. But I could have probably changed the plans to include a space specifically for that, but it didn't really seem like the best move for economic reasons as well as marital reasons. I thought maybe changing the plans kind of mid-build to accommodate a very large Lego set might not be the good play.
Probably not.
So it's in a box right now. It's because I got nowhere to put it. I don't have any sort of shelves big enough. And I'm not going to build a coffee table for it. That's kind of the other option with the UCS Millennium Falcon. You got to build a coffee table, a glass coffee table, and put it in there. And that just wasn't going to happen. But anyway, let's check in with the chat, and then we will take a look at the Ghost as far as like how many backers it got, and then we've got pickups. We've got some more HasLab news. Believe it or not, that it never ends, and I think that will sort of lead very nicely into our topic of when you kind of fall out of love with a line or with collecting or like some aspect of collecting. What do you do? Do you quit? Do you regroup? Do you sort of adapt? Do you become a customizer? Do you become a photographer? Like everybody kind of does it a little bit different, but I think everybody sort of goes through, ups and downs in their collecting journey. So we're going to talk about that. Before the show started, Brick jumped on and said, I almost, you missed the word here. I almost want to, unless he meant one. Oh, he did. He meant won, WON, like to win something.
Gotcha.
I almost won a VCX 100 light freighter like the Ghost in a friendly Sabak game, but turns out the dude who threw it into the pot was a lying scoundrel, Han something or other. Larry Reed is here. Star is here. Thanos Copter is hanging out. Jonathan Nichols, which is a name that I don't recognize, but welcome, Jonathan Nichols. I'm happy to have you. He said, okay, I've had the same feelings as of late. The collecting is fun. The space danger and anxiety of not having enough room sucks. I've done totes, but now I have multiples of totes. How do you deal? That's what we're gonna get into. That's
Absolutely.
exactly it. I mean, there's and I think a lot of people are kind of in this mode right now, and whether it's sort of like a whether it's something that we kind of all end up share. Well, we'll get into it because I have kind of an idea of sort of why we all seem to be feeling this on some level. J Mac is here as well. Star said, I'm currently going through my own personal version of a toy collecting Dark Ages right now. It's grim. Well, that sucks, but it's, I mean, it is what it is, right? I say this all the time. These are toys. If they don't bring you joy, then try to figure out why. Try to figure out if it's worth it, right? Like that's ultimately, I personally don't want people to have financial issues or relationship issues or like mental health issues over toys, over collecting. It's just not something that I think is worth getting that sort of involved in, invested in, whatever the case may be. So I just want it to be fun all the time, and when it's not, what do? Well, we'll talk about that. But Larry says congrats on the job. Thanos says, if I didn't collect toys, I would be working part-time. Yeah, fair enough. Everything's plastic, collectibles, and reviews. I still haven't backed at HasLab. Gonna regret it when the Hiss tank keeps shipping. So expensive here in Canada. Yeah, I mean that's part of it. We'll get to it. That the pricing is problematic.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. It's there's really cool stuff out there that is just not reasonable all the time for everyone. Bless the people that have more money than sense and can buy everything all the time. I'm jealous, admittedly, of people that are that have enough income, enough wealth that they don't really think about it, and they're like, I got 3 ghosts, and I got 3, whatever HasLab. 1-6 shooter is here. What's going on, Trevor? Oz is here. Whoa, what? My comments just disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Okay, they're back. Oz says, hey guys, what's going on, Oz? Jay Wright is here as well.
Whoa. He's not a Facebook user? When did that change?
I made him change it.
Oh.
Allison Troy is here. Says, how much AWOC info have I missed? None yet. I'm not saying there's not going to be any. I'm just saying none yet. Less info, more just me gushing about the line. But that's not information. That's not even news at this point. I'm just trying to catch up. Man of Action, is this live? It is Man of Action, but I'm behind on the comments. And he's got stuff to say. Okay. Ooh. Well.
Look at all these comments rolling in. We picked a hot topic.
It's too much. You guys need to pump the brakes for a second here. Larry says bills must be paid first. Absolutely. And Jay says mental health is part of this game. It absolutely needs to be. And I think maybe we don't talk about that enough. People get in these weird sticky situations where like they're burdened by their collections. And my suggestion to anybody is, if that's the case, reach out to somebody, preferably not me, but I'm happy to try to help, but my comments just keep. It doesn't help that there's so many, but Man of Action. This is an interesting sort of take, right? And there's lots of people that are in this boat. I collect the original stuff. My love is giving life to jacked up toys. Fixing new out of scrap is its own reward. That's cool. I like that. I like that, especially because a lot of vintage collectors even kind of just want like, mint on card or mint with card. If you know that, if you know why I say that, um, but yeah, there's so many previously loved toys out there in the world, and I think they just kind of get cast aside. And I really think too that, like, I've got tons of stuff on my shelf, and I've said this before. If I had to stop collecting today and I could never get anything else, I would be able to play with these for ages. I've got so much stuff. So, the idea of like the FOMO and stuff doesn't really hit me as much as I know that it does for some people. But AI Collectible says, I feel like I need a part-time job to afford collecting these days. Yeah, on top of a full-time job. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm right there with you, AI.
There's a guy at my old job. I used to work at an automotive parts store, and he used to work in a mill, and he's retired, but he actually became a part-timer at the automotive parts store so he can feed his automotive hobby. And I feel like with us, when we retire, I could see that happening. Got to get a part-time job at Toys R Us to feed the addiction.
For the last few years, I've thought about getting like the seasonal kind of Christmas part-time job at Toys R Us, and then like at the end of the season, kind of like asking if I can just get 0 hours but not get fired, so I can still just get a discount. And then I go into Toys R Us and I realize I don't want to buy anything here, so
that's another problem.
Man, the chat, I'm trying to catch up to the chat.
Yeah, it's popping. It's a good topic.
It really is. And I'm gonna just draw a line. We're just gonna move on. And
yeah, fair enough.
I see all the chats, and I'm trying to sort of keep up on them. I'll pull them up as we go. But the chat is great. I wish I could interact with it more. I guess this is the goal, right? To get a chat that's active enough that I can't keep up. As always, I try to bring up at least a comment from everybody. So if a new name pops up, I might bring them up. And if I miss your comment, I apologize. It's just down to the fact that we can't read them all. AI, I will bring your comment up when we get there. But before that, let's quickly take a look at the HasLab. Then we'll do pickups. And the HasLab, by the HasLab, I mean the Ghost. So you didn't back it. I didn't back it. It still did pretty dang well.
That's quite good.
21,768 backers. I know a few people that did back this, and a couple of those people are actually people that aren't really big. They're not sort of what you'd consider like big collectors, right? Like they collect very specific things, very few pieces. A good friend of mine actually backed this. He kind of had heard the rumors that it was coming, and he had already started like putting money away. He backed 2 of them actually.
Wow.
And he was like, he was like absolutely over the moon that this thing was the HasLab and that it backed. Day one, we were texting back and forth, and he was saying like, I don't know if it's gonna hit 17. I was like, look, the first 3 days of how a HasLab goes is very typically an indication of how the last 3 days will go.
Yeah.
So if it funds in the first 3 days, you'll see a very, very similar thing happen on the back end, which it did. I said to him after the first few days, I was like, look, it's already backed. I think it was at like 8,000 or 9,000 when we were sort of having this conversation. Let's say 8 for the sake of argument. I said, look, it's like a now I'm going to do the math wrong because I texted this to him and wrote it all out and did the math beforehand. But it's like 40, 20, 40. So the first few days, you'll see 40% of the backers. Then it'll just crawl along and you'll get about 20% of the backers. And then the last 40% of the backers will all do it in the last 3 or 4 days. That was exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I was following, comments and sort of the way people, it's just the way people collect, right? People that aren't aware how other HasLabs have performed. that were kind of like, it's never gonna get to 11,000. It's never gonna get to 14. It's never gonna get to 17, and it just kind of kept creeping up. I think it was at 14 before the big spike even happened. So
Yeah. I think
I
it
had
just
said,
hit its second tier.
yeah, I had said it'll easily hit 17 after about 3 days. I was confident that it would. Um, I said, I think it'll probably top out somewhere around 20, and it still did better than that, 21,768. So
Yeah.
you backing it and me backing it didn't matter at the end of the day. They still managed without us
How could they?
to get enough backers to get this thing to go. I think it's a great project. I think for people that are into it, it's a fun one. It's a big one. It very much feels like a HasLab. It feels like a dream project for 768 backers.
Something like that.
But it's not for everybody, and I get that. And HasLabs are not for everybody. Crowdfunding projects are not for everybody. Anyway, we're going to take a look at the newest offering from Hasbro in a sec. But before we do, let's do pickups. Austin, what'd you get in the last couple
I got a few
weeks?
things. Most of it's kind of scattered. I've been opening things, but I made sure to have some of them nearby. And got my first AWOC figures. There you go. I went with strictly the cat people. I went sorry, I'm still learning the line, but this is Tiberius, I know that.
Yes, it is. Yeah, watch out.
There we go. And what was the Kickstarter? Vero Atlas, is that his name? I got him. And I can't remember the other two's names off the top of my head. I wish they were in hand, but
and
I am impressed. I have some gripes. Nothing major. It's like I look at Tiberius' face here and in the fur around his face, and I go, you really notice the lack of shading around the face, I feel. But again, with my Warhammer background and even just some action figure customizing, like that's a pretty easy fix. Like I can do shading myself, so I'm not too worried about that.
I think that's been my only complaint, is that like if you could like hit them with a black wash, I think they're because the sculpt is there, the detail is there.
Oh yeah, it's 100% there. Posability wise, awesome. Like it's fantastic. It's I can't think of anything they could do better in terms of without going like full on like import articulation. And even then, I find a lot of import articulation to be unnecessary. Like it's articulation that I never use personally. So like this is perfect. Like if I was going to nitpick, and I mean this is really nitpicking because you can barely even tell, is like I would like pinless joints, but like I can barely tell they're there because they even had the wherewithal on Tiberius here for the tiger stripe to paint over the pin. Yeah. So it's not my number one example of ugly pins that will always be Marvel Legends Spider-Man figures. Luckily, they kind of got away with that but the still fairly recent ones have pins, and it's like this. What color? I think it was like a blue, or no, it was a red pin. So the red pin would really show on the blue side, and it would just look ugly.
Yeah, because he has the red pattern on the outside of his arm, but it's blue on the inside of his arm. The pin is red, so it's okay on the outside.
Yeah.
But then you get the red pin on the blue arm. Yeah, absolutely. That's like, I mean, if you need an example to make a case for pinless joints, Spider-Man is
100%. So I will say with pins, they absolutely did it right, where like if I put it right on the table in front of me, I can't even see the pins.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Fun to pose. I already took a photo of Tiberius outside. That was a lot of fun. Will I get more? Yes. Am I going to like pounce on pre-orders and pre-order everything as soon as they come up? Probably not. I'll kind of pick and choose. Yeah, like I'm happy with them. They're fun figures. I'll definitely get more. Oh, and also the amount of accessories they come with is I'm very happy with that. The amount of hands they come with specifically is awesome. Like it's nice having a Tiberius for crossbow, a mace, and 2 axes, and he can hold all of them no problem
Yeah.
because of all the hands. So that's great. Switching gears, also I got some GI Joe classified. I got the were Toys R Us exclusive, but Mike at eCollectibles was able to get them, so I ordered
Mm-hmm.
them through him.
Mm-hmm.
And God, I love these figures. Especially like I mean they're all great. Like I like Bazooka's awesome, but I already had the other Bazooka, so I already kind of knew what I was getting into.
Yeah.
The same thing. I have the you can probably see it right where my thumb is. I got the Python Patrol Officer.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Kind of knew what I was getting into, but Recondo being like this is the only Recondo out there.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is awesome. I love this figure. I actually again, it's the new toy. Super excited, but like I right now he's probably one of my favorites just because overall aesthetic. I just love it.
No, they're great. I mean, that's we'll sort of get there when we kind of talk about lines that we've sort of fallen out of love with. But as far as Hasbro goes, Classified's the only one I'm
Yeah.
really even paying attention to, and you know I just think they're doing great figures, like you said.
100%.
Was that it? That was.
Yeah, I got a handful of GI Joes. I got a handful
Mhm.
of AWOC figures. Very happy with both of them, especially given nowadays. And again, we'll dive into this a bit more, but like with the
Yeah.
price of figures for what these
Mhm.
cost and what I got, I'm very happy with them.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, we'll come back to that. Not that I got him this week, but I finally opened him this week. And man, what a, like an overwhelming well, I got a couple overwhelming figures. But I finally opened my Monkey King.
Nice.
And this thing is wild. Like the detail, you know, all the accessories and everything that it comes with is like it's a bit much. Like it's like hard to kind of decide how I want to pose them and sort of what I want to do with them because it's just like, you know, how much armor do you leave on? How many of the accessories do you leave on?
Yeah.
Versus, you know, how do you sort of scale back on some of that stuff so you can pose them a little bit more dramatically. But anyway, awesome figure. I got a couple more AWOC figures, of
There
course.
you go.
Feels like every shipment that I get from Mike at eCollectibles has AWOC figures in it, which is I'm not complaining. But my big item that I finally got, that I've been waiting for a long time. It's you know no fault of Mike's, but the Heat Boys Mecha Leonardo. This box is
Big boy.
huge. It's like it's not just big sort of size wise, but it's thick and it was like really heavy when the figure was in there. I opened the figure. I'm gonna try to do something different with that unboxing. I actually recorded it, and I'm gonna see if I can do like a proper edited review.
Oh, okay,
Um,
cool.
you might never see it. I'm gonna tell you that right off the bat. You might never see it. But I hope that I can sort of do it. It comes with this crazy stand. The stand has storage,
Oh,
so that it
cool.
says like Ninja Turtles logo on there, and then this pops open. It does pop open, and there's like storage inside. So I put all
That's
the extra
cool.
accessories and all the bits and pieces that I didn't fit on the figure in there. It comes with like a full instruction thing, which I
Oh,
was
nice.
initially like, I'm not going to need instructions. Like I know how action figures work. I know I needed it. I
Yeah.
really needed it. Um, this thing is bananas. I still need to get the battery so that I can do the light up eyes. But the accessories that it comes with, like it just like the weapons, he's got, you know, the big old rifle. He's got a shield that converts to armor. There's like his big full size swords, which are metal. Smaller sword, like kind of not quite daggers, but sort of smaller swords that are also metal. He's got these sort of they're not pistols. They're bigger than pistols. They're not made of metal, but they're pretty metal.
Huh.
The figure is heavy. There's a bunch of metal in there. The articulation is bonkers. The shell opens so that you can put a Ninja Turtle in to pilot it.
Oh,
I'll show that. I won't show much, but I will show that because it's actually I can't because the swords are on. Like he's so heavily loaded up that it's hard to kind of like show the detail. Needless to say, this was worth the wait and the price. And now I want the other ones. But anyway. AI has one. He's had one for a while. He says that was a legitimate assessment. It's absolutely bananas. It's crazy. You talked about import articulation. The articulation on this thing is wild to the point where like you kind of pose it and then you're like, oh wait, the joints go further. Like I can get it into like a better pose. Thanos Copter says a weird mashup, but looks like a great toy. Yes, it is both of those things. And as soon as I heard about them, I was like, I think I need these. Devoid of Logic says the next TMNT Heat Boys mech should be releasing this month. Yes.
Oh boy.
I think Michelangelo is scheduled to be next, and they've kind of released the Raphael as well, and they all look awesome. And then they kind of blew it, or at least then they kind of lost my interest when they revealed that they're doing an April O'Neil, and I was like, not for me, but that's okay. All right, that's pickups. Let's take a look at another. My computer is not.
Well, before you bring it up, I'll emphasize one word you just said, and that's another, which I have my own issues with that, but I'll let you bring it up. Everyone knows about it, but I'll treat this as a big reveal.
Well, it is a big reveal.
Right? It's a giant reveal.
It is, in fact, obviously. I don't think anybody watching this is going to be like surprised. The Hasbro Marvel Legends team announced and revealed and launched the sort of 60th anniversary kind of traditional looking giant man. He stands about 2 feet tall. So it's about $100 a foot.
Yeah.
It's not about, I guess it's exactly that. There it is, sort of in all its glory. That's not, I mean, I'm not going to be able to do a very good job of sort of here. Let me just this is always the frustrating thing when I try to show these, is that I can't sort of show this, which is what I want to show.
Yeah.
What are your, I was gonna say initial thoughts, but have at it. What are your thoughts on
that? I actually love it. Like, one biggest thing, and it was the same thing with Ghost. The reason why I didn't back Ghost is the reason why I feel more comfortable backing this is 200 American is a lot easier. I feel like sure. I could even so I'm currently a backer, you know, and I feel like I'll stay a backer now since I have a job. That goes a long way.
Yes, yeah.
But I did the math for us Canadians since I got all the numbers. So after shipping, tax, conversion, it's 375 Canadian.
And what's shipping on this one?
I got to go back and
not
check.
$100 though.
No, it wasn't $100. No, I think
the Dragonfly was $30 to ship. Which is weird. It's odd to me that the Ghost was $100 to ship, but I mean, I guess it's
so expensive.
Huge.
Well, shipping was 46, which is a lot.
Yeah,
but it's not 100, so I felt better. Here, since I got the receipt right in front of me, in American, it came to $275.50, and that's with the Canada GST, the BC PST, and shipping. Which, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, and totally get it. Conversion, just it is what it is. Nothing you can do about it.
Man, conversion rate now is not good.
It's not good. But still $375 for this figure. Again,
Mm-hmm.
375 Canadian. I don't think is horribly unreasonable by at least by
Mm-hmm.
today's standards. I feel a lot better than around 900 for the Ghost. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's literally like almost a third. So plus
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Hank Pym and Giant Man. Um,
Okay.
I always wanted the Toy Biz Build-A-Figure one, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't like paying that much for.
And what's that
And
one going for right now on
I
the
think
on?
I've seen it go for around 200, 250 Canadian. So
Yeah. So that's another thing is that I think sometimes with these, I think there was kind of a similar thing with Galactus and the Sentinel, right? Like the Sentinel, those Build-A-Figure Sentinels were going for 150 to $200,
yeah,
and then the HasLab one was much bigger. So I think there was an easier sort of jump there.
yeah.
AI said, like, I feel like Giant Man HasLab is the most reasonably priced HasLab yet. It is proof that speaking with our wallets and not overpaying for crowdfunded projects works.
Hmm. Now with
I
that, people have had complaints,
Mhm.
right? And I personally think I don't agree with the complaints, but at the same time, I understand the complaints.
Mhm.
People were complaining about the tier unlocks. Like if you look at Galactus, you look at
Sure. Yes.
Sentinel, their tier unlocks were action figures, more toys.
Yeah.
And then I think Galactus is a really good example, because with the tiers, you had some of his heralds, and then I think the last unlock was like the Doctor Doom head, which was actually my favorite unlock, by the way. I think that thing's awesome. But it seems this way, at the very least, they're either going to not include figures at all, or they're just doing it in reverse, where the
Well,
heads are the unlock
yeah.
first. And personally, I really like the heads. I think they're awesome. I
Mhm.
love the zombie one in particular. I hope it gets.
I love the Skrull one.
Yeah, Scroll one's great too, especially with all the recent releases of Scroll figures. I think that'd be an awesome display. Everyone's talking about classic Avengers.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Marvel Zombies. That's why I want this guy, because I want that.
Sure. And we've
Um,
gotten a few of those recently too with the What If line.
exactly. And then there's the
Mhm.
old Marvel Select ones, which are
Yeah.
expensive, but if you can find them, awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I mentioned earlier, when you said another HasLab.
Hmm.
Think I think it's still it's going to meet its mark. I think it will. I don't know if
Hmm.
it'll hit all the tiers, but I think it'll get funded. But
Yeah.
I feel it's questionable to have one HasLab end, especially one as expensive as Ghost, and then immediately start another one. I
There.
understand it's a different line, but like
Yeah.
many collectors, myself included, I collect both lines. So
Yeah. Well, and that's a big thing is that and I've said this before, I think you've said this before too, like the guys that just do one line, it must be so much easier to just
yeah,
do one line or one IP, right? Like if maybe you got a couple lines, but maybe it's like maybe you got a Super 7 version and a NECA version,
mhm,
or a Hasbro version and a Super 7 version, or whatever it is, right? Like that would be more manageable. But when you're a fan of Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Ninja Turtles, GI Joe, Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, pick your insert your IP that you're buying. It, yeah, I mean, is it better to sort of have one start right after one is finished, or do when we had, what was it, three or four of them all at once? What was it, two, like, for PulseCon 2 years ago, I think it was. And there was a lot of debate. Now, I don't know that anybody will ever know the answers unless you had all the information that Hasbro would have had in terms of like who backed what,
yeah,
when they sort of pulled out, when they, whatever, whether the people that pulled out of the Rancor put their money on the Sky Striker, which is the people say like the Sky Striker only funded because the Rancor failed, and I don't. There might be an element of that for people that were backing,
yeah. Like
multiples.
maybe it got more backers because of that, but I wouldn't put the 100% funding behind
It,
that.
regardless, no one will
Yeah.
ever know. I mean, we're all gonna it's we all spend hours and hours and hours on YouTube speculating.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of it. But yeah, I don't know, because if you put them on top of each other, right? If they're both going on at the same time, people have to kind of pick or choose.
Yeah.
And in the long run, for me as a collector, I'd almost prefer that, right? I'd almost
Well,
know what are my options
exactly.
and be able to pick the one that I want, than be offered something that I want, back it, and then be offered something else that I want and be like, oh, now how am I going to do this? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so I don't know. I don't know that there's a better. Everybody complained that they all came out, that those ones all came out at the same time, and now people are kind of complaining that this one is coming on the heels of the last one, which I would say kind of came on the heels of the last one, which was the Dragonfly. Like, that didn't end that long ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Actually.
I think people kind of like, it's that recency bias, just like we have with like our favorite toys. It's the
Mhm.
same thing with like what's in the toy news. The Dragonfly was in July, um, or it ended in July, towards the end of July, and then we had the Ghost for August, and now we has the Giant Man for September,
Yeah. It's
and then we get PulseCon. And
oh
I'm
god.
not saying I think there's going to be another HasLab, but I'm not saying that it's not possible. There could be another HasLab launch during PulseCon, which
Wouldn't
is
surprise
September
me.
22nd. So we could be a few weeks away from another one. Like, it feels like it's ramped up in the
Yeah.
last few years. It feels like it's escalated to the point where, and we've talked about this, it feels like it's escalated to the point where you have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
It's not sensible to buy
Mhm.
everything anymore. And I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are kind of looking at and kind of thinking about, and they're like, you know, okay, I backed the Dragonfly, and then I backed the Ghost, and I would like to back this, but is there just going to be something on the back end of this?
Yeah.
Like, is there a break? Is there a point where I'm able to catch my breath? Is there, how, how do I justify this? Where do I find room? Like,
Yeah.
that's the other thing, with a his tank on the way and a Dragonfly on the way. I'm worried about space now, but I mean, those are coming sooner rather than later. I'm looking at, like, where am I going to put this Mecha Leo that's literally on my desk right now?
Yep.
But that's not even, I'm not even thinking far enough ahead for his tank and Dragonfly. Let alone, a Giant Man or a Ghost, or whatever, a Sewer Layer, or a Cat's Lair, or whatever.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I
I'm
I
just. I mean, I it's easy to say. I personally think it's just too much too fast. To your point earlier, I would rather them drop 3 HasLabs at once and I choose,
Yeah.
as opposed to backing one and finding out I want the next one as well. Because to be perfectly honest, if this dropped the same time as Ghost, I would back this over Ghost. Not because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I love Giant Man, I hate the Ghost. It's just in terms of finances, and I can only have one, Giant Man makes more sense.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the thing. I think they do kind of shoot themselves in the foot. I don't think there's a whole. I mean, I'm sure there is a lot of people, but not every Hasbro toy collector collects Marvel Legends and Vintage collection,
Mhm.
because like it's two different scales. So maybe
Yeah.
they don't collect Vintage, or vice versa. But I'm sure there is a few hundred people who will
Mhm.
go, why?
Oh yeah, I'm
If I can't,
sure
I
that there's
can't.
an overlap. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's got to be an overlap. There's got to be people who say, "Well, I can't back this now because I just dropped 500 plus American on the Ghost."
Mhm.
Either way, I want it. I want the zombie head. That's a big deciding factor, and so I got to keep an eye on the last 3 days, because if it doesn't get that zombie head unlock, I we'll see.
Mhm.
Also, I love the fingers. I think I want to see them in action though.
The articulated fingers, yeah, absolutely. I'm just sort of pulling up comments for people that are hanging out in the chat. Hello to everybody that's jumping on. And then we will look at this. Thanos Copter said, I like that they aren't locking figures in the HasLab as tiers. And you kind of mentioned this, and I wanted to echo this sentiment a little bit as well. I think keeping the price where it is means that maybe fewer people will kind of be like expecting, figures to be in the unlocks. This is the price of this. Are we calling it an action figure? I guess it is, right?
It's a big action figure.
It's in the 6-inch scale. It just happens to be giant. So you're not getting extra action figures with this action figure, which I think makes sense, especially since we're getting a lot of the anniversary Avengers figures. I think they even said that we're gonna get like a first appearance Wasp. We're gonna get a 6-inch tall, 6-inch scale giant man as well, like a unembiggened giant man. But they didn't want to put it in here just in case you don't back this, which I think makes sense. I think making the tiers things that sort of add to this figure makes sense. And I think it definitely helps keep the cost down. So I'm of two minds, right? Having backed the Dragonfly and the Hiss, I like getting the extra figures. I won't lie, I like getting the extra figures because it allows me, or it encourages me to back two so that I can sell the extra figures because what I really want is the actual vehicles. And so I can sort of offset a little bit of the cost in that respect. So maybe there may be an element of that where people are looking at this and thinking like, well, I won't be able to sell off the extra figures to recoup some of the cost.
Yeah.
I don't know that people
buy
their HasLabs that way. Maybe that's just me, but
I could be wrong, but I think this is actually the cheapest HasLab yet. I don't think there's.
I think the board game, Hero Quest.
I forgot about that.
Was less. And there's been a couple Transformers that I think might have been less, but they weren't far off. Like, I mean, that kind of brings up another point, right? AI said, they kind of got smarter, and this is a lower price point. It's not as it's something that's got a lot of history.
Yep.
But Star brings up a good point as well. I completely understand and respect that fans love what they love, but is anyone experiencing or beginning to experience a bit of comic book character movie figure fatigue? There's so many of them. I think so.
Yeah.
I definitely think that plays a part. I think that and it's not even fatigue. Like, I'm looking forward to all the new Marvel series, all the new Marvel movies. I'm looking forward to those. But if you're like an MCU Marvel Legends collector, how many versions of Captain America in an MCU costume do you need or want? You know what I mean? Like, I wish they would and I know that they kind of changed the costume to sell more stuff. But wouldn't it be nice if they were like, hey, we just reused the same costume from the last movie so you don't have to buy another action figure? I think there's an element of like a fatigue in the consuming of it, rather than the content. I think maybe that's just me, but AI says, I want to back it, but I'm waiting to see what is announced during PulseCon and Toy Fair at the end of September.
That's the other thing, because if that stuff gets announced while this is still live, I think that could kill this HasLab, unfortunately.
And that brings up an interesting thing too. Like, we're talking about, the superhero fatigue. We're talking about, HasLab fatigue. We're talking about a HasLab on the back of a HasLab on the back of a HasLab. I'm going to pull this comment down before I switch to this. Brian Brink is doing an amazing job doing charts for these. And I want to share his chart. This comes from geekdadlife.com. And this shows, the sort of the curve for a few different HasLabs. So the Dragonfly is the green one that's at the top with the most backers. Then below that is the Sentinel. And then below that, we have the Ghost and Galactus, kind of on similar curves. And then the black one is the Engine of Vengeance. And if we take a look at how Giant Man is doing,
scares me.
there's a oddly familiar curve there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Giant Man isn't going to back. What does it need to hit? 10,000?
10,000.
Yeah, 10,000. I could see it hitting 10,000. The stretch goals are at 12 and 14. I mean, Mattel had the Jurassic Park gates fail. The Ghost Rider failed.
Black Series Rancor failed.
The Rancor failed. That lightsaber.
Yeah, that was just a weird one.
It's better that we forget about that one because that was just a forgettable HasLab. I wonder if we're getting to the point where we're just maxed out. We're just maxed out, like space wise, money wise, interest wise. Like are we just is this just sort of the inevitable beginning of the end?
There's two ways I kind of look at it. Like what you're saying. Yeah, like maybe people are maxed out. Maybe Giant Man isn't a top priority for them, so they're not willing to drop 200 American plus on it. I think a lot of it is kind of what people come to expect. Like I said, a lot of the comments where people were upset for the tiers aren't action figures. Which I totally get. So maybe that's a lot of people. I think it's funny. A lot of people were saying, the HasLabs cost too much. Cost need to come down. And I think Hasbro listened to that and kind of went, okay, we'll bring the cost down for this one, but the catch is you don't get action figures with it.
Sure. Yeah.
Which I think people want best of both worlds. They want cheaper with more, which I mean, I can understand wanting that, but realistically, you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'm not going to say this is the perfect HasLab. Because I don't think you're ever going to have the perfect HasLab, but in terms of my priorities, this is right up there. That the cost it's still like it's a lot to swallow, but it's not bitter. So I could swallow that $375 Canadian pill a bit and be happy with having a big Giant Man figure. But I'll put it this way: at the end of the day, if it doesn't fund, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm not going to scold people for not backing it. So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
It is what it is. It's if it does make it all the way, great. I'll actually probably buy it regardless if the tiers are unlocked, despite me really wanting that zombie head. But I also kind of think someone might make an STL file and I'll just 3D print and paint one, which could be
that's a good point.
Be fun on its own.
And the zombie head is just a faceplate.
That too. Yeah,
it's not even a head. So as soon as somebody gets those in hand, theoretically, all they need to do is basically 3D scan the faceplates that it comes with and then modify that.
Yeah.
So very, very feasible. Brick is here jumping on in time to hear about failures, and he makes it actually a good point, and I should have sort of clarified this. We were talking about there are people that sort of don't collect multiple lines. So I'm specifically referring to people that do collect multiple lines in terms of, having the overlap for these. But he says the real question is, are they reaching new buyers with these or just selling to the same folks? And that's a good point, because if they're not, if the advertising isn't working and it's not getting out there, are the same people just digging deeper and deeper and deeper into their pockets in order to get these?
I would think so. I can't imagine. I guess it depends what you mean by new buyer. I would imagine.
Well, I think
probably.
I'm convinced, and this is purely opinion and speculation. I have no insight into this whatsoever, but I am convinced that there are people out there that might. So just looking at Giant Man, right, and whether we'll sort of see this fund or not, I'm not even considering. But I'm sure there's people out there that don't consider themselves, Marvel Legends collectors, but absolutely love the Avengers, like the classic, first appearance Avengers, that might back this.
Yeah.
And I think more so than the Ghost, because like we've sort of said, the Ghost is a newer ship from an animated series, no less. Like it's not one of the bigger Star Wars properties. It's fantastic. I don't want anybody to twist my words. Rebels is incredible. It's really good and one of my favorite sort of Star Wars things. But not everybody watched it. Not everybody knows what the Ghost is, and it's still got 21,000 backers.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of old school Marvel comic book collectors that maybe aren't Legends collectors, but they're going to see the first appearance Avengers of these classic Avengers, and they may have interest in this. So I think there is a market out there for some of these things that goes beyond the average collector. Lego's kind of trying to appeal to non-Lego collectors at the moment. They're trying to reach out to more adults to try to get them to buy, these bigger, more elaborate, very often, iconic IP type sets. So who knows? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
I look forward to seeing how it does, and if it struggles near the end, what Hasbro is going to say. Because I know in the case of the Rancor, they announced they'll release another figure, like the Rancor handler was going to be with it, but they never didn't have a 3D render. So I'm wondering if this struggles near the end, maybe they'll go, "Oh, we will include the Wasp" or something.
Well, that as far as what they include, Jer Bear Man Cave, who is another new name, welcome, says I was going to back. Then Ryan went on Dan Who and said it was only 200 because they didn't add any other figures. So all tiers added. I'm not familiar with the Dan Who stream that Ryan was on, but Jer Bear Man Cave is suggesting that Ryan said that it was like, here's what we are offering and this is the price. So they kind of misled. Like I said, I'm not familiar with it, so I'm not going to say that Brian lied. I'm just going to say that Jer Bear Man Cave feels like he was lied to, and fair enough. I mean, if you thought it was going to be $200 and include the alternate face insert and then the Skrull head, I could see that. I mean, like it's a little bit like getting a Marvel Legends figure and then having to buy a whole wave to get your Build-A-Figure. Like it's the way they do it, right? Like there's always something more with Hasbro. There always seems to be a little bit of a wrinkle in terms of like, oh, you want to collect this way? Well, we're gonna kind of push you to do this.
Yes, yeah.
Star is saying that I'd be happiest with one top of the line, perfectly articulated, highest quality figure, rather than 24 cheap figures that are okay. And there's certainly lines that go that route, right? Like if you're an Avengers person, there's SH Figure Arts or Mafex or something like that, where you can get, there's like one a year or maybe two a year, rather than 27 Batmans from McFarlane.
Yeah.
If Allison Troy's watching, can you give us an update on how many McFarlane Batman figures there are? Because it's probably more than 27 now.
Oh, way more.
And Brick saying, I know people who are classic comics, people who don't actually collect Marvel Legends, that were blown away by Giant Man. So there you go. Like I said, if Hasbro can kind of tap into that market, I guess in Thanos, I doubt crowdfunds really even hit radars of people that aren't already collecting and paying attention. I don't know. That's the thing. We have perspective bias because we're on the inside of this bubble looking out, and we just kind of make these assumptions that everybody that could possibly buy one is already sort of in the know. I don't think that's true. Um, because these things do pop up on kind of pop culture websites. So I think if you're a Marvel guy, you'll probably end up hearing about this. If you're a Star
Yep.
Wars guy, you probably heard about the Ghost. If you're a G.I. Joe guy, you probably heard about the Dragonfly, right? So now, is a G.I. Joe guy going to hear about Giant Man, and is that going to sort of bring him in? That might be a bit of a stretch, but Larry said, "Good thing the Ghost made his live action debut this week."
I'm sure it helped.
Barely. I genuinely now don't. No disrespect, Larry, to you whatsoever. I don't think it made any difference whatsoever.
Really?
Look, what it did in the episode was almost get blown up. So it would have been a little bit different, I think, if the Ghost figured prominently and the Ghost, took out something or someone of importance. But it basically shows up, gets kind of, its feathers ruffled. I don't want to like spoil anything if people haven't watched Ahsoka. And that's it. It didn't do anything. It didn't fire a weapon. It didn't like engage with anything. It just showed up. It physically just appeared. Is that gonna make somebody pull the trigger on a $900 purchase? I don't think so. But maybe it did. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm saying that most certainly would not have sort of been enough to push me over the edge. Even if I was on the fence, I don't think that would have done anything for me. I don't think it was enough. That being said, I think the Razor Crest did as well as it did, largely because it was in every episode.
Yeah.
Mando was in the Razor Crest. There were scenes in the Razor Crest. There was conversations in the Razor Crest. Grogu stealing the little, knob off the switch thing. Like it kind of played a part almost in the story. So I think the Razor Crest did well because it was in the show. I don't think the Ghost was in the show in a way that made it more or less significant to people. That's just my personal opinion. And now we're behind. Now Allison Troy has answered my question, so she has updated us on McFarlane. 98 Batmans, 56 Jokers, 52 Batwings, and a bag of potpourri made from a ground-up plastic of old Batman figures that smells like the figure you'll never get. How many of those figures are black light sensitive? That's the new thing that they've got going. Now, we will come back to those black light sensitive figures. Should we get into kind of the topic proper? Is all of this just bumming us out?
It depends. I think it depends what
this
you're
was
into.
Your topic, so you take the lead on this.
Yeah. So there was a number of years ago, for a number of years, I didn't collect. I was out of the game. Wasn't my thing anymore. I was really into Magic the Gathering. I was really into Warhammer. I was really into, nerd tabletop card games. When I got back into the hobby, because during COVID there was no meeting up people to play games, I'm like, I'll start collecting toys again. And then I started making little displays, and I went, why am I spending money on these? I don't do anything with them. At least with Magic and Warhammer, like especially with Warhammer, there was a build paint aspect, so stuff you can do at home, and then you can go out and play games with your friends. There was a lot of value I felt I get with Warhammer. I wasn't getting that with toys.
Engagement.
Yeah,
there's engagement with the product. Yeah.
So I'm like, what can I do with toys that makes me a bit more excited? And I don't know how I came across it. I know I wasn't actively looking, but I think it was just like a recommended page on Instagram or something. And it was toy photography, and I thought this was really cool. So that got me back into the love of toys. But even then, there's been times where I had to kind of take a step back and go, okay, no, this is too much. And there's a number of reasons. Number one reason I feel a lot of people kind of fall out of love of collecting is finances, either personal finances or you just feel it's not worth the value anymore. It all comes down to dollar signs. And
spoiler alert, it never was and it never will be.
Yeah. And especially nowadays when you have so many options to collect from and so many different price points, it turns into what can I get if it's the most bang for my buck? And that alone can also turn off people, because suddenly you got to do, well, you don't have to, but people feel like they have to do research and find out what's what. And that, when it turns into homework, maybe they're not interested.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, but at the end of the day, like, and there's some lines I just don't like. I still collect sort of, but I don't collect as much as I used to. One of the big ones is Marvel Legends, which and Hasbro is such a weird company because they make, to me, one of the best lines, and then they make some of the worst lines, and it's just bizarre. And I'll say right now, to me, one of the best lines, G.I. Joe Classified. It's the same price as Star Wars Black Series, same price as Marvel Legends, but you get a bunch of stuff. And you get lots of times unique sculpts, or if they're not unique sculpts, they're reused in a very clever way. And I have another figure here that I showed off last time, and I like this figure. I think it's a good figure. It's the Rebel Commando.
Yep.
Why is this $50? This is $37, $36, and you get more. It doesn't make any sense. I only got this because I found it on clearance for some reason at Walmart. Like, at that point,
and I would have bought it at the price that you bought it at too. But
yeah, $29 for people who might be wondering. Yeah, at that point, I said
Canadian. That's like $7 US.
So I get really, really frustrated with stuff like that, and Hasbro's gone so bad with it, with their like their deluxe figures. Why is Boba Fett deluxe? He comes with his jetpack and the 2 flame effects. Why are you charging $50 for that now?
Yeah, I'll chime in on that one because I agree 100%.
Yeah,
and I don't own a Boba Fett for that reason.
It's so stupid.
When they redid the Boba Fett a couple years back, they redid the Boba Fett, I think in the Black Series, and they said, look, he comes with his weapons, he comes with the jetpack, and because his armor, because it was like the Empire, was it the Empire? It must have been the Empire one. They're like, and his armor is like pretty worn, so there's a lot of paint apps. So that's what you're basically paying for. And I was like, okay, I mean, I guess, there's a lot of Boba Fett that you can't reuse, right? For a lot, like a lot of it is pretty distinct sculpting.
Yep.
You can't just do another Mandalorian. It would still look like Boba Fett because he's got, the dents and the dings and the scratches and all that kind of stuff. But since then, they've reused it like 3 or 4 times.
It's stupid.
And
now it's on like a retro card.
Point. But then it's still the same price point. So I'm sort of like, I'm glad that I didn't buy that first one. Because again,
and I'll make the same argument I did last time. That's like, again, I'll use the Rebel Commando. Would I rather spend $50 Canadian on this or $50 Canadian on this? Which is an import figure.
Yeah.
Comes with not an insane amount of accessories, but comes with alternate face plates. It comes with alternate hands, which is, for $35 American or $50 Canadian, that's really good value. This is a perfectly fine figure and I like it.
Yeah.
Not for $50. It's just that simple. So that's where I get really frustrated and kind of fall out of love of maybe not collecting as a whole, but certain lines. And in a case of, and people always make the argument like, you know, you get more bang for your buck of GI Joe because they own the license, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. And I
Hmm.
get that, but when you get this much stuff, which is also 100% stored on them, as a side note,
Hmm.
which is just
Yeah.
awesome, for $37 Canadian, and for this you get 2 rifles, a swappable face, and a backpack
Yeah.
for 50. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. The articulation's not as good. The yeah, the accessory loadouts typically aren't as good. Star Wars Black Series, they don't, for whatever reason, like they don't come with a lot of accessories, but most of them can't store their extra accessories either.
Yeah.
Like when they do belts, they don't mold it so that the holsters work. Often they'll kind of like mold, you know, I
Mhm.
was gonna say knives, but I guess it's probably vibro blades, and things like that get molded in more often than not. Feels like, at least. Um, I, I, for me, a lot of lines aren't taking any risks.
Yeah, that too.
Like there's a lot of lines that feel very stale. Um, and I think it's largely I'll full disclosure, it's the bigger brands, the bigger lines,
Mhm.
the IPs where they're paying licensing fees, things like that. I get it, I understand. That market is bigger, that market is different. But if you're trying to keep collectors on the line, you kind of got to do something different. Like in a lot of ways, I feel like they're kind of banking on, like, I hate to say it, but I feel like they're more so banking on volume. They're more so banking on non-collectors than they are banking on collectors.
Yeah, very
Um,
possible.
Whereas a lot of collector lines, new IPs and things like that, I think lean heavily into doing something different, or doing something that's a little bit outside the box. They're changing up articulation schemes, changing up the way that they package things, changing up, what gets included. SH Figure Arts comes with the swappable faceplate, swappable hands. You got your AWOC figures. They come with alternate hands, no faces or alternate heads yet. You can buy head packs, but it would be nice if we could get an angry pale. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That in time maybe. Um, but I feel like the little guys are taking chances, and they're swinging for the fences, so to speak. There's I guess it's like the big guys are risk averse now because they've gotten to a point where they're comfortable,
Yeah.
whereas the little guys are doing something more interesting and more impressive.
Yeah,
To me.
because I mean, I think gone are the days for, like, at least obviously for Hasbro and Mattel, where if your stuff peg worms, who really cares? Because I think, back in the day, it's like if your stuff didn't sell, the store didn't carry your stuff. But now it's like I've seen pretty much every single Marvel Legends wave go on clearance at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually an indicator. Oh, they don't sell well,
Mm-hmm.
but they're GameStop, Walmart, Toys R Us, doesn't matter. We'll always get the newest wave every time.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
yeah,
So maybe that plays a part. Hasbro isn't like, oh, we want to make sure the stuff sells. It's just
yeah.
these
Brick
companies are
asks a
going to.
question here that is very relevant, and I will answer it. I don't typically sort of go into this stuff. Do big ghosts and giant mans count as risks
Not to
for
me.
for a multi-billion-dollar company that is crowdfunding those? I would
Yeah.
say no.
No.
I would say it's a risk if they make them and then try to sell them. But when it's crowdfunded with no guarantee that it's going to actually be made, I would say no. I would say that their investment look at the Ghost as an example, right? When they launched the campaign for the Ghost, their investment in the Ghost was probably less than $1 million.
Yeah,
And
which for
this is
Hasbro's nothing.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like for the average person to sort of get to where Hasbro had been, and to sort of try to launch a line or an item like that, as a Kickstarter or something like that, it probably would be a risk, because they probably would have invested a lot of time and money on their part just to get there. For Hasbro, it's incidental costs. Like you're already paying all those people that are already doing that stuff. I am 100% certain that those teams work on projects that never make it into the public. So it's like they pick and choose, and then they ask the public, should we do this or not? So I think the risk is effectively zero for them. Again, personal opinion. I'm not saying that that's the truth. I'm not some sort of toy guru who sort of knows the answers to these questions. I'm just saying that at the level that they're at financially, I don't think launching this is a risk to them at all. But again, personal opinion.
So that was a big one. I think people can all agree with is the finances. Are you getting the bang for your buck? Is your hard-earned money going towards something that's actually good or crappy? Well, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, that's all subjective. It's all your own opinion. But objectively speaking, I think we can all say a $37 G.I. Joe is better value than a $50 deluxe Star Wars figure. And same thing for Marvel and all that.
I mean, unless you absolutely love Endor and you want to build out a playset and you're not and you're not interested in G.I. Joe. I mean, that's the thing too, is that like price and value
varies from person to person. Yeah.
Star makes a good point too. It seems like the more someone has of something, the less it means. I get flooded with so much that just that fact starts turning me off. Captain America, right? Like, what for me personally, I'm maybe different than a lot of collectors. Once I find a figure that's sort of good enough, or like a character that's like good enough, I don't need the variants. I don't need the different ones. There are exceptions. I've said this before. Black Series, I really only collect versions of Luke Skywalker, and I will buy every version of Snake Eyes that they do. That desert one looks awesome, and I can't wait to get it.
Like it's that makes sense in this. Like again, different strokes for different folks. Maybe the $37 Luke Skywalker having multiple versions of Luke makes sense in multiple versions of Snake Eyes because maybe they didn't care about G.I. Joe growing up. And at the end of the day, I just wish he kind of gave you more for some of those lines.
Oh, absolutely.
Simple as that. Like one that they recently announced was another Spider-Man figure, and it's the first appearance Amazing Fantasy one again, but he has the blue spider on his back. I think they may have even gave him an extra set of hands, which was cool. But otherwise, it's the exact same figure.
Yeah.
And it's like they have the toe hinge. They have it. But they didn't put it on.
That buck, I love that buck. And I said the exact same thing. That if that buck had the toe hinge, that would be the perfect Spider-Man.
Yeah, awesome.
That first appearance, Amazing Spider-Man, just needs the toe hinge.
That was it. And it's
so funny, I got that one and the Renew Your Vows one because I wanted the first appearance one with the toe hinge, but I wanted the articulation in the one with the toe hinge. Anyway,
I did the same thing. I heated them up. I swapped their feet, and so now I have my perfect Legend Spider-Man.
I should do that. I should just do that.
But with that, I'll kind of lead into my my next, and this is more, I think, maybe more of a personal thing, but I think people will agree up to a point. Is when a company makes you wait for something for a long time, and the thing you get is disappointing. That is, and
examples.
I got the perfect example, and I know. I think
Rick's excited to hear them.
And you're probably going to laugh because I collect their stuff, but I'm going to crap on them real quick, and that's Mezco.
Okay.
I'm going to crap on Mezco because that 89 Michael Keaton Batman is horrible. It's a horrible figure. It sucks. One of the worst things I've ever held in my hand. When you have a toy and you feel like you can't move it without risk of breaking something, that's a horrible toy. I don't care what people say.
Yeah.
If people say like, "Oh, you got to be gentle and learn," it's a toy. It's a toy. I should be able to put this supposedly highly articulated figure in dynamic poses without risk of anything breaking. But and it was delayed for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
If it for have that much of a delay and you actually get like this actual like garbage figure is the it has completely turned me off from Mezco. Not, I shouldn't say completely. That's an exaggeration. I got their Michael Myers recently, and it's awesome. But it makes me so much more weary. I don't pre-order. I'm not going to pre-order these figures because I now want to see people get them in hand and see what they say.
I hear a lot of people say that, and I wonder if that's I wonder if that is going to be something that brands are somewhat forced to take into consideration. I know that the GI Joe classified line is sort of working behind the scenes to get there. They would much rather announce a figure for pre-order that's like, you order it now, you get it next month kind of thing. Like that's their goal. And I'm not trying to be an apologetic for Hasbro, but like my understanding is that through the pandemic, that was what happened, is that like all these things were lined up and then it just nothing worked. But I mean, that's true of everything everywhere. And this sort of flood that we've gotten in the last couple months is stuff that they meant to release, a year ago, and they're just finally getting to that point where they're caught up, and it seems overwhelming to people, which it is, admittedly. Like,
it definitely
I'm
is.
one of those people where I'm sort of like, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like, you're gonna deliver all this stuff into the market, but then it's like it's just overwhelming, and just people aren't even having the chance to appreciate this stuff because it's just coming so hard and fast. But yeah, I think I've heard from a lot of people that they're effectively just cutting off pre-orders, and if they miss something, they miss it. And it's it's kind of a blessing in disguise because it's one less thing to buy, right? So that sort of goes with that idea that prices are getting kind of wild. And then if you can wait long enough, a lot of this stuff, like you said, some more so the Hasbro than anything else, but you start to see this stuff on pegs long enough, and then you start to see it at Target for a discounted price, or Walmart at a discounted price, or you wait for a Hasbro Pulse sale to pick up that kind of, the Endor Trooper or something like that, where it's something that you'd like, but you don't need in your collection.
Like, and with Hasbro nowadays, 1 month pre-order time is really short, but you at least kind of know what you're going to get for the most part. It reminds me of Mythic Legions, right? Like, sure, the Mythic Legions wait time is a lot longer, but you know what you're going to get. Like, I don't wait for reviews at this point, because I own enough where I know what to expect, even if it's a new body. Like, their style, what you're going to get, so you can base your pre-orders off the live streams, off the pictures off their websites. Kind of go, yeah, that looks great, I'll get that. Mezco is all over the place, right? They have different molds for different body types, which is, don't get me wrong, the variety is great.
Yeah.
But when you don't know what you're getting, it makes pre-ordering with a company like Mezco a lot scarier. Where, especially when you're paying, if I paid $37 for a GI Joe figure and I wasn't happy with it, oh well. $37. I mean, that sucks. I spent $37 on something I don't like, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I got that Batman figure directly from Mezco. After shipping and conversion, it was $200. And for me to actually hate the figure sucks. Like, that sucks.
Okay, and here's the big problem with that too. And this is, I mean, that's a big problem, don't get me wrong. But a lot of times, you get something and you go, it's just not my thing. And you can kind of turn around and sell it.
Yep.
I don't know that Mezco Batman is going to be an easy.
Nope. People are selling it for well below cost. If I sell it now, I'm going to lose quite a bit. which
Hmm.
might be what I do. I like it's maybe it's better to get some money back and then have this figure that I hate. I don't know, or maybe it's better to wait and maybe who knows. All I know is $200 figure, and to hate it is a really kind of gut wrenching feeling.
Hmm.
Where, and again, I'm hyping up GI Joes, but when it turns into I could have bought 5 or 6 GI Joe figures over one crappy Mezco figure, that's that
And you paid
hurts.
for it 2 years ago.
That too.
So if you'd put that in the bank and just sat on that money, you probably could have bought even more figures.
Yeah, like there's so much more I could have done with it. Again, I'll say it again. If I bought a GI Joe figure I didn't like, oh well,
Yeah.
$37 down the drain. But seeing
Yeah.
$200 figure I don't like, ugh. So
Yeah.
that's a gut punch. That turns me off, and it's not even, and it actually kind of has some like ramifications to other companies where it isn't just, well, I want to not pre-order from Mezco anymore. It makes me reluctant to pre-order big ticket items from any company.
Hmm. Thanos, maybe if you hold on to it long enough, people will forget how bad it is.
Maybe.
I don't think so. Not in these times, right? Anything that is said is recorded forever on the internet. So, um, yeah. Now, that's things that we're sort of falling out of love with, right? Like
Mhm.
we're sort of questioning what the big guys are doing. Now, I will just throw this little bit of a curveball in, and I mentioned to you that I had a bit of a curveball.
Okay.
Now, not everybody is going to agree with me, but this is one of those things where to me it's like good on them. It's not for everybody, but to me these are toys and these are fun. This is the Black Series holiday figure collection where they basically take existing figures and just paint them in like Christmas things. So you get a Mandalorian trooper in a Christmas sweater. You get a Purge trooper that looks like a toy soldier. You get a security droid that's just Christmas colors. I don't know. It doesn't. It's not like doesn't look like
Snowman
anything.
colors, maybe.
Well, you get the snow trooper that looks like a
Oh,
snowman.
that one's great.
A
I love. I'm
Jawa that looks like Santa with green salacious crumb. And then a white Ewok with sort of blue hands, like kind of Yeti type colors. Um, these are just fun, and I mean, I
they're
I
fun.
like that these exist. I get the people that look at these and they're like, "Oh, that's a cash grab. It's just Hasbro trying to sell us more figures."
It is. I mean,
Yeah,
at the end
they
of the
are,
day.
but at least they're doing something that's not another Luke Skywalker. I
Mhm.
I love Luke Skywalker, so it's a good and bad example. It's not just another update. Like Luke Skywalker is a classic one because it's like, oh, they did Return of the Jedi, but he has two. Like one of the hands is gloved versus two hands, and it doesn't like it's not accurate to whatever scene. Blah blah blah. People
Yeah.
get really hung up on that stuff. That's not me. I don't. But this is just fun, and I like that these are fun. They're not going to be for everybody. And in the comments there, very good point. In Canada, those cost $45. Again, they're nearly $10 above what the normal retail is, which is why I'm not getting them.
Yeah.
If the Ewok pops up, I might get the Ewok just because I love Ewoks. Do I think the value is there at that price? No, absolutely not. It's
No.
reuse for like a festive holiday season type thing. Yeah, no way am I going to say that these are worth it. But they're fun. I mean, at least they're sort of trying to do something a little bit different. Um,
I've actually I've gotten 2 holiday figures. They were both on clearance,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
so like out of season, no one wants the Christmas figures anymore.
Mhm.
So they tend to go on sale, go on clearance, and I buy them. I go, great, I'll have them for next Christmas for like photography. So I got actually I have one Christmas one and one Halloween one.
Yeah,
I have
I want the cat Wookie.
I see. That's the one I have. I love it.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like, it's so silly, and I think I got it for like $16, which is like
But that's just it. It's
absolutely.
like, I mean, they're fun, and sometimes Hasbro gets fun right. I will give them
Yep.
that. You know, I think like, I, you know, we're sort of bashing Hasbro a little bit today for some of the things that they do.
But also
But some of
praising.
the stuff they do is cool. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's you know, again, I'm not going to argue that the price points are correct. But the value is there for me with some things. With other things, it's not so much, like these ones. Um, and we've sort of talked about, like, you know, is crowdfunding, you know, something that can work for the big guys. I mean, I think they're risk averse already, and so they use it as their sort of risk assessment, and they don't commit to anything that
Yeah.
way. But that being said, let me bring this up. Ray Paz asks, have you and Brick, because Brick and I are in some sort of like relationship where people just sort of tie our collecting habits together. We're really more like the odd couple. If people actually knew how much like the odd couple we actually are. Ray Paz says, have you and Brick checked out that legendary Kickstarter? Yes. Have you seen this?
I have no idea what it is. I'm going to bring it up on my screen right now and take a peek.
I backed it right off. Admittedly, I don't know how deep I'm going to go on it. I backed for the like minimum, just so that I can get in there to get into the backer kit to sort of see how much shipping is going to be, because that is the absolute killer for us in Canada. Is if I order a figure, and the figures are reasonably priced, I would say $39 US for one figure. They get kind of cheaper if you buy more.
Oh, there it is.
But
There it is.
But but if you know, if you buy a $39 figure and then you pay $40 in shipping, it ain't worth it. I'll wait for the workaround. I'll pick them up at a toy show, or have somebody pick them up for me once they're released, or buy them from a website or something after the fact. But you know, here is a company that's doing something, you know, new and fresh. It's an original IP by some people that are I don't know the specific details, but they are involved with Guardians of the Galaxy, like the sort of more recent versions of Guardians of the Galaxy. So it has a very kind of sci-fi space vibe to it. 7-inch articulated figures. The sculpting's done by the Four Horsemen, so the designs are by the team.
Oh, cool.
But the sculpting is done by Four Horsemen, so you kind of get an idea of what to expect. They're using translucence. They're doing glow in the dark stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
The like a couple of the unlocks are like really cool figures. Like this guy on the end here with the pink, like all this craziness that's going on is one of the unlock goals. But I mean, they're not that far into the campaign, and they're already, like, I think the last email was 60%, but it might be 70%. I can't remember. But they're at 89,000 of 125 with 35 days to go. I mean, this thing launched only a few days ago. There's 3 or 4 figures that I want, but like I said, we'll see how and where and when I get them. But it just jumped up again. Anyway, and that's just one of a few sort of projects, Kickstarters, lines that people are doing. That is, I'll add that down in the description. I'll add the link to that in the description. That's a line that's just, it feels refreshingly new, and a little bit different. And I appreciate that. I want to see more of that. I want to see more of people doing things that are a little bit different. that feel similar to what we've got. You know, there's definitely. I'm not saying that IP is like entirely original and that it's like, oh, this changes everything. You know what I mean? What's the Zack Snyder Rebel Moon, is that what it's called, where they're like, this changes everything, sci-fi will never be the same. I don't think that's going to be true, Zack Snyder or Zack Snyder fans. If you're a Zack Snyder fan, please, don't be offended. I'm sure it's going to be great, but it's cool sci-fi figures. That's
it's
where
really
I'm at
cool.
with it. Yeah. And that's sort of the same thing for AWOC with me, is that like it's just different. It's something new. That's the same thing with the Mecha Turtles, right? We've had umpteen versions of the Ninja Turtles in like a slightly different aesthetic and different proportions or different scale or whatever. But to get a 5-pound metal robot Leonardo, it just feels different. It just hits different, and it's like, yeah, it's a Ninja Turtle, but it's a Gundam Ninja Turtle. Like it's different. It's the same but different. That's how I kind of avoid falling out of love with collecting, is finding new things to fall in love with, which sounds very disloyal and flaky.
Well, it's funny on the flip side of that, and like I sit there and go, like, I'm looking at this going, like, this is really cool, and I actually like to back it, but then it kind of segues into the same problem everyone has. Like, I think everyone has mentioned this, is space.
Yeah,
and when you can get overwhelmed and kind of start falling out of love. So, like, for that alone, I might not back this at all, because it's.
Yep.
I went all in with Savage Crucibles. I still don't know where I'm going to put it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yes,
I have no idea. It's like something, again, is going to have to get sacrificed and either put into storage or sold. That's the only way for me to make it fit. And that's just a constant battle. So even I look at this legendary line and go, this is really cool. This is exciting. And the price of the figures aren't bad at all. There's soft goods, tons of accessories. Like, that is like, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck there. That is awesome.
Yeah, CJ Jessam is doing the soft goods too. So 4 Horsemen are doing the sculpting, and CJ's doing the soft goods. So exactly, it's good soft goods.
And that's the other thing that has going for it. You got big names in the toy world there involved with this Kickstarter, because there's a lot of scary things with Kickstarter where, like, if you back it, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. So that's a bit more peace of mind. 4 Horsemen are involved, so like they're putting their name on the line. If this project for some reason fails, and they kept your money, that 4 Horsemen will get crapped on big time.
Yeah, is that on them though?
No, not necessarily, but at the same time, I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be upset with 4 Horsemen, saying like, I backed this project because you did the sculpt work. And even if it's not their fault, there'd be backlash.
Oh, you're saying if they fund but then don't deliver?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's always a risk with Kickstarters. That being said, I believe that these guys are known well enough that they already have reputations that are effectively on the line too, where I think there's an element there where there's some safety in that. I mean, if there can be any safety in 2023, but yeah, I mean, the what was it? There's a few comments here that I'm just trying to like process and read a little bit. It's like Brick says flashier, feels like Image Comics of the 90s mixed with Zack Snyder. It's very new and now approach. Yeah, I would echo that sentiment that it definitely feels very very modern and very sort of like up up to the up whatever, you know what I mean.
It's hip and cool.
Yeah. Thanos Copter says a good topic would be what is your shelf canon like mine of all my figs exist in one large universe, but a lot of people have separate lines. That's yes. I mean all my shelves are homogeneous. For better or worse, that's how I organize them. That's not entirely how I play with them, just because I have young kids. So every once in a while they break the rules of what's on what shelf. I don't, yeah, it is what it is. That's just how I display stuff. I don't really care. I typically buy lines though. Like I typically buy with the intention of having multiples, largely because I think that I kind of buy into IPs in terms of the stories and things like that too. So I have a harder time buying a figure just because it's a really great figure. It's easier for me to buy into a line if there's sort of lore and a backstory that I enjoy.
Yeah, that does help a lot.
Because I have at 41 years old, I don't have enough imagination to come up with enough headcanon to just have everybody share the same shelves. But Alberto says I only separate sci-fi and fantasy now. Fair enough. But if you start swapping some parts, I mean, you can have
Thanos Cooter.
You can start sort of having a mix there. And Brick mentions, yeah, they're smart to pull in the pedigree of a person who worked on the new Guardians comic designs and the Four Horsemen. You're definitely going to have a little bit of respect sort of put on your project if you're bringing in those names for sure. Raypaz says it gives him a 90s comic book jumping out into figure form. That one figure looks like 80s. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, there's, you pull elements from a lot of different places. I mean, that's what's fun about the new IPs, right? Is that there's no like, this isn't the evolution of something that came. Well, I guess it is the evolution of something that came before, but it's like, they're amalgamating different things, different influences, and so on and so forth.
It just, I mean, and plus you kind of avoid those. I'll use this as the example because you already did. You get those people that aren't going to complain because Luke Skywalker's hand looks weird because of a certain scene. You avoid that altogether with unique IPs. You just go, this is how it looks, deal with it.
Yep. And they're doing a comic book. So that's like, I back for the minimum, but the minimum is a digital comic book. So I'm kind of waiting for the comic book to see whether or not I like the characters. And that will heavily influence, what I buy in the figures themselves.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think the figure designs, like I said, there's 3 or 4 designs that I really like now that I would enjoy having those action figures. But I may find that the characters themselves are more appealing going forward. I want to shout out some other lines too. Like there's, like you mentioned, Savage Crucible, Armies of Ashmore. And that's, these are 6-inch scaled lines. There's also, Delta 17, if you want to go 3 3/4 inch O-ring figures, as well as like Call Sign Longbow, among others. Operation Recall, like in different scales, there's different stuff going on. You don't have to be like, if you're in an abusive relationship, you don't have to be. There are, end that relationship and move on to something different. I was gonna say bigger and better, but if you can stay small with 3 3/4 inch, or you could go bigger and better with 6-inch. No offense to the 3 3/4 inch guys. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the reality is, and we'll kind of wrap up, because your camera has decided to.
Yeah, I know. I can't focus anymore.
At the end of the day, like, there's options, right? There's new stuff, there's new versions, there's new scales, the big IPs are getting picked up by different brands. So maybe you want to stick with an IP that you love, but buy from a smaller company. I mean, maybe that refreshes things. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe that can get the spark going again. If you don't want to fully give up on the relationship. If I'm sort of continuing this analogy, that's some form of counseling or something. I don't know. I'm done with that. I don't want to.
Well, it's funny. Like I'll use like Spider-Man as an example, where like of all the Marvel Legends Spider-Man figures we've gotten, it can be like overwhelming. Like so many of them. Can you find the perfect one? Does the perfect one exist? If you can afford it,
Your toy
I
soulmate.
yeah, like for maybe try the Mayfex one. Like it's easily accessible right now. It's expensive in comparison,
Mhm.
but it's many would argue it's the perfect Spider-Man figure. So maybe you're
Yeah.
not burnt out on toys. Maybe you're burnt out on Marvel Legends Spider-Man. Maybe try the Mayfex one, which
Mhm.
I mean, I understand maybe you don't want to spend $95 on a whim, but who knows? If you do, it's a good figure.
Mhm. Star says, now this is, I'll just answer this based on the information that I have. Star asks, I can't tell, is the series done in a style like Motu where everyone is an individual warrior, or is it a series where there will be soldiers, civilians, etc., and have reps from various nationalities? There are, I believe there's sort of soldiers as well. I think most of these characters are individuals, but there's 3 or 4 that I think are army builders, and I think there's different groups and clans and factions. Um, I haven't gone too deep on the lore. Like I said, I'm kind of waiting on the comic book, but it looks promising, is what I will say. Um, and Ray Paz says a good topic would be, is the market too flooded? This happened in the 90s with comics. Absolutely, and it happened with
Yep.
card baseball, basketball, hockey card collectors too. I don't know if hockey cards. Do people in the U.S. buy hockey cards? I always wonder that.
I don't know. It was
Basketball and
definitely a big
baseball,
thing
but I don't.
here.
Oh, it's massive here. But anyway, that is neither here nor there. Anyway, that's definitely a good conversation for another day. Maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe we're not actually getting um fatigued by all this. Maybe we're just getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's maybe less about um our level of interest and engagement. Maybe it's more about our inability to kind of spread ourselves across all these IPs and all these waves and all these lines and all these crowdfunding projects and all, like, maybe it is just too much. Like, maybe we've reached critical mass.
Well, and that's the
um
thing. That's one thing I found when kind of rekindling my love for the hobby is learning to say no. Like
yeah.
you don't, as much as you may want something, you don't need it, or maybe you don't necessarily need it right away.
Yeah.
Um, so being more choosy is always good.
Uh-huh.
Getting more bang for your buck when you can is always good. So maybe don't get the $50 Boba Fett figure. I mean, unless you really want it, if it's your favorite character, maybe do it. But if you don't need another Boba Fett, just don't buy another Boba Fett.
If you have the Empire one, maybe you don't need the Return of the Jedi one.
Yeah, like I got the Mayfex one, and there's 2 versions, Empire and Return of the Jedi. I got one, and I'm happy with it.
Maybe, but yeah, but do you have the original vintage toy throwback color edition one?
No,
You don't need everything. That's the thing.
no,
I can't
that's the
collect all the
thing.
things. That's my thing, is I can't collect all the things. So it's just, you get what you can, you pass on what you have to, um, and hope that you kind of don't get to a point where you just can't anymore, right? Where you just absolutely can't. Anyways,
I'll say this: what makes me laugh when people go, "Ugh, I don't want to buy this." Don't.
yeah, yeah, I know. And then and then people say that's that that you're kind of just dismissing a criticism, and it's like, well, I mean, maybe that's a dismissive way of sort of addressing some people's criticisms, but
yeah,
it's a pretty simple solution.
if you're unhappy with the current HasLab Giant Man,
Don't buy
don't
it.
back it. Yeah, simple. Don't want the
Anyway.
$50 Boba Fett? Don't buy the $50 Boba Fett. Like, it works no matter where you put it. Like, if you're not happy with it, you don't like it, you don't like the company's direction, whatever, don't buy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Allison Troy makes a very good point, and I like this very much. This is kind of similar to my I can't collect everything. You can have anything you want, you just can't have everything you want.
Yep.
I think that is the flip side of my coin. I think I would definitely agree with that comment. Where there's a will, there's a way. No, because then that goes back to everything. All right, oh man, StreamYard is killing me today. But anyways,
that's okay. My webcam's killing me.
yeah. Let's wrap it up. It's been an absolute pleasure. Austin, it's always fun to have you on, and it's always a bonus when you bring the topic with you. That makes my life that much easier. So thank you for being on. Do you have any last words? Is there anything you want to share with the folks before we get going?
No, I'll just really emphasize, at the end of the day, if you don't want it, don't buy it. If you're falling out of love, slow down. I'll say that.
Yes.
Right.
Take it slow.
Yeah.
That's, if don't rush in full infatuation, take it slow. Just let it progress naturally.
That's right.
All right. It's been fun. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'm getting frustratingly close to 500. Anyways, till next time, guys. Bye-bye.